here.
All right.
Hi, everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful day today going through all of these wonderful lectures from the various authors. I am very proud to introduce Douglas S. Pierce, author of the Omega Rising series. Take it away, Douglas.
Thank you, Nimmer. Hey, everybody. I hope everybody's doing well. Hope we've been having a great time during this event. I can't tell you how proud and happy I am to be a part of this event and right here in my own natural community in the Metro Detroit area. You know, as a long-term pagan, as somebody who has gone to convocation, who's involved with crossing hedgerows in Belleville, Michigan, it really is really exciting to be a part of an event like this where we get to celebrate fellow pagan authors and the things that we do. And so I guess my role in today's event is to talk about my newest book, Omega Rising. I am an author of urban fantasy and epic fantasy series, 2 series that are ongoing. And my latest book is Omega Rising. I know it's kind of probably showing everything reverse. Excuse me. But this is a urban fantasy novel that is set here in the Detroit area to begin with. It is set in our world. About 2005 is when most of the action takes place in this particular novel. Well, the full title is Omega Rising: Origins of Agent Rusty Bones. And the novel centers on and is told from the first person of the main character of Agent Rusty Bones. Of course, that's not the name he was born with. That's who he becomes. And this book is sort of the story of how he becomes Agent Rusty Bones. His original name was Jason Smith, and he was a police officer in the Dearborn Hills, which is sort of a made-up city scrunched in between Dearborn and Dearborn Heights. But he's from Dearborn Hills, Michigan. He's a police officer, and he has been participating in a secret government program called the Omega Project, and he is someone who doesn't believe in anything. His wife is kind of a new age pagan type person who's into all that stuff, whereas Jason is a agnostic, doesn't believe in anything, doesn't believe he even has a spirit, doesn't believe in magic or anything like that. And so he joins this Omega Project, which the premise of it was that they were going to give him special training and special events, and in the event that he ever died in the course of duty or whatever, that they were going to bring him back into his body, specially modified, and he would essentially live forever, become like the super soldier. And the reason they chose officers who didn't have any special religious beliefs is because those people they felt wouldn't have anything that would prohibit them from participating in a program that dealt with their spirits. And so Jason Smith is on patrol on a Halloween night in 2003 when he is killed in the line of duty. And that happens all in the first chapter. And then coming out of that is basically after getting killed, getting shot in the forehead, he wakes up trapped in his own body, unable to say anything, do anything. And he discovers that it worked, and he's a little bit surprised to have woken up dead. And so the novel goes from there, and basically him figuring out how to live in this, or how to exist in this undead experience that he's in as a zombie, trapped in his own body, and who the people are in the Omega Project and what they're doing to him. And he kind of finds out that there's some nefarious things going on, and he wants to find out the particulars of how he died, especially when another officer who's participating in the program also dies later on and is killed under suspicious circumstances. So the novel, like I said, it's an urban fantasy. It's set in the real world, and then he meets a bunch of people that end up helping him out to figure his way through the Omega Project and kind of see if he can escape it and become his own person, so to speak. The first person in that journey that he meets that's willing to help him is a guy named John Red Bear, who is a Bureau of Indian Affairs police officer from the Navajo Nation. And so essentially, John Red Bear helps him to realize some things about himself, and that begins this journey that Rusty Bones, his new name is Rusty Bones, and begins his journey into this whole world of magic and spirituality that he never really believed in existed, and how he's going to have to utilize some of the things that he learns in order to become the kind of person that he can be, that maybe he wished he was in life. And so it's one of the reasons I wrote this book originally as a series of blog posts way back in 2003, 2005 timeline. And I originally did a self-publishing of it through blurb.com and back in 2010 or so, and I didn't use editors and the professionals. That I did it all on my own. But basically, I revived this story and got a professional editor, got a formatter and a cover artist to really kind of bring this novel back to life, and starting up this series again. So it really is a passion project of mine, this fantasy series, or this urban fantasy series. And I'm in the midst of working on book 2, Omega Falling, which kind of gets us to the point where he will truly become Agent Rusty Bones. Right now, he's Rusty Bones, sort of a rogue. And what I really love is about this character is his kind of irreverent style. I write it in the first person, so I get to talk. I get to tell the story through his own words. And he has some colorful language, and he not very educated on magic or spirituality or anything like that. So he's coming at it from an outsider's perspective. And so everything he's encountering, he's kind of learning for the first time and understanding some of the things that were done to him as part of the project. So, so that is Omega Rising, the first novel in a series that is going to basically become a trilogy. The second book is Omega Falling, and the third book is going to be called Bones Wolf. And the general layout of these books has already been written in a series of blog posts. I just need to turn them into a novelization. And then once I get that trilogy done, I plan on doing a pulpy short novel type of series of basically different kind of cases that he gets involved with, and you get to see the adventures that an undead special agent, the FBI's only undead special agent, gets involved with. You can imagine the kind of cases that he might have to deal with, even things that Scully and Mulder turned down in the X-Files. So that is Rusty Bones and Omega Rising. I have a bunch of paperback versions of this novel, and if you want to purchase them from me, I can mail out signed copies of the novel. For the purposes of this event, I'm selling them for $10 each. Normally they're about $12. And I should point out that this book has been formatted and illustrated like no book you might imagine. There's a lot of really cool features to the formatting of this book. Each chapter begins with a cool image and sort of a reverse printing of white on black. And then basically it is really, really kind of a premium kind of formatted novel. With each novel I'll send out also a little bit of swag items. I have these like keychains with Rusty Bones image on them that I give out to people who purchase it, and I've got some other little goodies that I'll include as well. If there are any...
what is the best way for them to reach out and secure their copy through you?
Sure. Okay. I have a presence on Facebook, on Instagram, and on Twitter. You can reach me through my email, directly at Douglas S. Pierce 313 with no periods or anything like that in there at gmail.com. I'm sorry. And also through, if you search Douglas S. Pierce books through any of those, the Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook, you can find my author pages for each of those sites. You can reach out and direct message me from there. Just mention that you are part of the Wicca Press event, and I will be happy to offer the copies of this book for $10 each, and I'll inscribe them. I'll get your information from you, your address and stuff like that. I take payments through Cash App, through PayPal, or even regular old check. If you want to send me a check, I can do that as well.
And have you faced any challenges adapting from your blog posts to the novelization?
I would say yes. So the blog posts were really informal stuff, and it was really my first foray into. I hadn't even gone in with the idea that they would eventually become a novel, and so the blog posts were just were from the perspective of, okay, this guy's outlet is to have the secret blog where he kind of does these diary entries, and so he's venting here and there, and he's telling stories of things that he's done, and so they're really not in any kind of novel format. So there is quite a bit of work in converting them into a continuous kind of narrative that works in that people would kind of expect to read. And so, and I've had to add in some bridging parts, things that maybe I didn't think about in terms of when I was writing the blog posts or wasn't even consideration. I have to kind of create some scenes out of whole cloth in places, just to kind of fill in certain gaps.
That's pretty exciting, though, to take that sort of not raw, but a more raw material and then refine it into a full format. That's really interesting, actually.
Thank you. Yeah, it's something that like I said, when I began that blog, it was I was a father of a fairly young child, and I was just looking for a creative outlet to do something in the evenings when I could, and it was something that was I really enjoyed, and a lot of my friends who and pagan friends from all over the country or whatever, I was really active with some friends on some AOL boards, and a lot of them became characters in the blog. And when I would write blog entries, they would post as their characters sort of in the comments, either reacting to or saying something in response to the blog posts. And then so many of the characters that Rusty engages with and meets are basically based on people that I knew that were friends. And I've kind of taken what their pagan path was and kind of interpreted it in a way that, okay, what would their if their magic was tangible and something that people could see, how would it come about? What would it look like? And so it was really fun creating those kinds of characters and giving people an outlet to see themselves in that way, it was really fun.
Yeah, so that's actually really interesting, because I think that what we've learned about this year is how much we can do magically through the screen, and creating whole universes virtually with others is one of the ways that new pantheons will be created down the line, etc.
Yeah.
And that's actually a huge topic of the upcoming Hecate Sickle Festival. So maybe we will see you there as one of the presenters, because this seems definitely up that alley. That would be cool.
Oh, that would be cool. I'd be interested in seeing how I could participate in something like that and seeing what I have to offer. Absolutely.
Yeah, awesome. I will definitely share that with the coordinators, because they're looking for pagan authors that are doing kind of exactly this. So I'll definitely let them know. Awesome. Is there anything else that you would like to plug? We can do a last call for questions.
Yeah, I would like to mention my other series. It's also, like I said, I write epic fantasy as well. And in between the time when I first released Omega Rising and the time I've re-released it, I actually started on and completed the first two books of an epic fantasy series. And so book one of that series, The Seeds of Hope, or The Seeds of Hope is the series name, is The Hunted Maiden. And this is a really thick, kind of really big book, 500 plus pages. And book 2 of the series is The Seedling Song. And of course, these are available on Amazon as Kindle books and Kindle Unlimited. They're free to download, just as Omega Rising is. And I also have copies of these books sitting here as well. And the prices are for this event are $12 for the Hunted Maiden and $10 for the Seedling Song. Or if you get order the two of them together, I'd sell them for $20. And a little bit about this epic fantasy series is it's based on 2 characters, the story of 2 intertwined characters, Mouse and Seldy, the characters that are shown on the cover here. Mouse is a young human man who's serving on a airship as a lowest crew member because he was a former stowaway that was found, and he takes care of prisoners of this bounty hunting ship. And he's an aspiring musician, and he's got this secret hidden ability to hear the theme songs of the people he meets. And sort of what I mean by that is, just like in every movie you go to, or you imagine Star Wars is very emblematic here. You know, whenever Darth Vader comes on screen, you hear a certain theme song coming. And this series, the magic in this series is based on music in many ways, music and also certain pagan elements as well. He has the secret ability to hear the theme songs of others, and he can interpret and understand aspects of who they are through listening to those theme songs. And now no one else can hear these songs, and no one even really knows that they exist. Every person he's ever met has one. So he learns things about people just by being near them and listening to their songs. Of course, he kind of gets caught up in that stuff, and so people think he's kind of slow at times or think he's daydreaming because he's kind of listening and concentrating on hearing the songs and what it means. He's able to tell certain aspects about people, kind of their intentions, maybe what they're trying to do, or maybe if they're being deceptive or they intend to harm him or somebody else. He can kind of make out some of that information. And then the other character is Seldy, and she is a circus performer, and she believes she's an elf, and she's an orphan, basically raised in a gypsy-like society called the Freeborn. And her compania, they travel from place to place in wagons, wheeled wagons, and they perform circus events for folks. And she is the only elf in the group, and she is very happy in her life, and she's an animal trainer because she has the ability to communicate with animals through her mind. But people don't know that because it's kind of magic and it would be forbidden. But her adoptive mother basically tells her not to tell anybody that she can do this. But you know, how these 2 characters meet is Seldy is kidnapped and is taken aboard that bounty hunting ship. And when they meet for their very first time, and he tries to listen for her song, he discovers that she's the first person he's ever met that has no song. He can't hear anything. And he learns that she is not an elf, but is fae. And also that through a series of visions that he finds out that they're connected in ways that he had never understood or not believed. And matter of fact, his ability to hear music is tied in with her specifically. And so basically these 2 characters, basically have all these secrets they need to figure out in a world in which she is hunted, and he is, got the secret talent or ability that he can't tell anybody about, but he learns that he has this talent because he needs to help her to find her song. And so this series is set in a shattered world where islands essentially float in the sky at different levels, and in order to get from one island to another, you have to fly in some fashion, whether it's wings of your own or through skyships. And so they have to figure out why she is being hunted, what happened to her song, and all that, all while they are under attack and being chased. And so it's really an epic fantasy adventure series of these 2 characters coming to understand who they are, why they are the way they are, and how they are connected, and the secrets that lie between them, so that they can try and defeat the enemy, who is somebody who is really can't be killed, or at least they can't figure out how to be killed, because he can seemingly move from body to body of foes. And so the Seeds of Hope is my ongoing series. I'm currently working on book 3 of that series, as well as book 2 of the Omega Rising series. So that's so if you like epic fantasy, and like I said, these are available on Amazon and Kindle Unlimited. So if you want to check it out and read it for free, you can do that on Kindle Unlimited. And if you would like to get signed paperback editions, I have those available as well. And I have, similar to the keychains that I have for Agent Rusty Bones, I have keychains for Rondell and Selly as well. So for swag to give away as for those who purchase it. And if you visit any of my social media sites, you'll likely see some whimsical photos that I take with some dolls and stuff that I had made for my characters. This is a Rusty Bones doll right here, and I pose them with books, and I pose them with other types of things. I have a doll for Seldy and a doll for Rondell. And so it's a fun way of engaging and kind of posting about the books and talking about stuff without always just, hey, buy my book kind of thing. So and also you'll see photos of the new puppy that we have, the Shiba Inu puppy, that she is darling and a force of destruction, but she's a bunch of fun, and I like posting all sorts of random photos of her, of me doing stuff with the dolls, and occasionally on stuff on books, plus I do reviews and other types of things as well. So I'd really love it if you folks would jump on my social media. On Instagram, it's Douglas S. Pierce Books. On Facebook, it's Douglas S. Pierce Books as well. And then Twitter, Douglas S. Pierce 3, I think. But if you search for Douglas S. Pierce Books on Twitter, you'd come across my profile. So.
Yep, and we've shared a couple of those links into the side chat here for anybody that wants to follow up. And then there is a request if you are willing to read an excerpt from one of your books for us.
Sure. Is there a preference?
No, I don't think there's any preference. Whichever you feel so called to.
All right. So I will read from Omega Rising. Okay. Chapter 1, Omega Rising. Working on Halloween sucks. I can't wait until I get enough seniority to get this night off. Yeah, Morgan, it'll be a few years before your rookie ass will get there. I looked at the taller man as he studied the duty roster for the night. But I can tell you one thing for sure. What's that, Smitty? It's going to be a wild one tonight. What makes you think that? Morgan turned towards me. It's Halloween. It's a Friday night. I shrugged my shoulders and slipped past him on my way into the dingy little closet-like space we called the lunchroom. And I heard something on the radio on my way about a rash of robberies over in Detroit. I've just got the feeling that something's coming our way tonight. I eased down onto a cranky metal folding chair and pulled my right leg up so that I could start lacing up one of my boots. Damn, I sure hope so. It's about time I found some excitement in this job, Morgan said. He remained standing, looming over me like a skeletal giant. Careful what you wish for there, Rook, I snorted. You'll get enough action on this job without wishing for it, trust me. You crusty old vets are all the same, hoping for a quiet shift spent at some donut shop. He ran his right hand through his dark, oiled curls. Man, if I could only get that tactical ops team like you, I wouldn't need to hope for some action. He paused for a moment and shot me a look. Hey, why are you even working tonight anyway? I thought you old guys booked off shifts like this. Since the divorce, I've got nothing better to do, I muttered, dropping my right leg down and pulling my left one up to work on those laces. Sitting back in my chair, I interlaced my fingers behind my head and closed my eyes. So I might as well babysit the likes of you. It keeps me from thinking about other shit. I kicked my feet up on the second chair and leaned even further back. Hey, be a good rookie and wake me up for roll call. Yeah, sure thing, Hoss. It looks like you've got about 15 minutes. His shadow passed over my eyelids as he sauntered off. I waited until his footsteps faded away before opening my eyes again. I didn't much like the kid and didn't want to answer any more questions. Not tonight, anyway. As the ancient Coke machine gurgled back into action behind me, I surveyed the small, cramped room. It was dominated by two oblong Formica tables sitting in the center that bore the scars and stains of more than 20 years of hard use. 6 mismatched folding chairs were shoved haphazardly around each table, while another half dozen lay strewn about as if to make an obstacle course out of the place. Along the far wall, a large cork pegboard hung over the small condiments table. It was covered by an assortment of unread safety bulletins and 3 stacks of yellow and dog-eared wanted posters that were more fun to read than the dry technical bulletins. The sharp tang of freshly burnt coffee overlaid the older, staler odors of gun oil and boot polish, meaning that Sergeant Mason was pulling desk duty tonight. That man hadn't made a good pot of coffee in the 12 years I'd known him. The coffee maker uttered a wet belch of agreement with my assessment and hissed as yet another drop of the acrid mixture slid onto the hot plate beneath the overflowing pot. I dropped my hands down to cover the small bulge in my gut, buried my chin in my chest, and tried not to think how much I missed spending time with Kenny and Jasmine. I drifted into a fitful sleep. Daddy, Daddy, Jasmine ran towards me from the corner bus stop, her pigtails flopping and her shoes scuffing the pavement. Yeah, baby girl, I turned in time to catch her and twirl her in the air like a helicopter. All the kids at school, she said in a breathless voice, are talking about our house and how scary we made it. Mrs. Thompson even mentioned it in class today, she giggled when I swung her around before putting her down. Awesome, Jazzy. I gave her a gentle chuck under the chin. We did an amazing job this year, don't you think? I loved your idea of having the witch coming out of your bedroom window. That was a great choice, Jazz, she beamed. We both turned to face the ghoulish menagerie of death and doom that covered our front yard and admired the results. From top to bottom and side to side, the Smith homestead was one wicked Halloween set piece. The front yard was dressed up to look like the wrought iron fencing of those old-time cemeteries, while every available square foot of grass was packed with the headstones of both famous and infamous characters. One gravestone was marked by its tilt and the wax hands reaching up out of the soil as a zombie sought to escape its earthly prison. Another decaying corpse hung from the large maple tree in the front corner of the yard. It was being pecked at by a battery-operated raven that had an eye dangling from its beak. Ghouls, ghosts, and mummies of all kinds peeked out from behind every conceivable hiding place. A giant spider dangling from a massive web strung between the garage and the flagpole. Piles of skulls and other bones lay scattered everywhere. Every window but the front one in the house was boarded up, giving the impression that the place had been condemned. The lone exception was Jasmine's second-story window, where a green-faced and scary-looking witch was positioned to appear as if she were emerging to look for her next fiendish meal. A headless corpse was strewn on the low part of the front roof, as if it had been carelessly dumped from above. The garage, however, was my pride and joy. The normal backdrop of hanging hand tools and lawn equipment was covered by a painted screen that gave the appearance of an evil laboratory. The scene was further set by a moving Frankenstein body laid out on a metal table that would sit up every few minutes, groan loudly, and then settle back down with a sigh. A mechanical piano pounded out spooky music. A dry ice machine sputtered and spilled out a roiling fog that immediately sank to the floor and drifted out onto the driveway. I felt a small hand tugging at my elbow. I dropped my calloused hand down and squeezed her tiny warm hand in mine. I love Halloween best of all, Daddy, she said in a happy voice. It feels like our own special holiday. And so that's the first couple opening scenes of the book. And that description of a Halloween house is actually based on one that when I was living in Canton, there was a house that often did their Halloween decorations up that way every year. And it was something that my wife and daughter, when my daughter was young, that we all loved to go and see each year. Those folks did Halloween right, that's for sure. And that description is pretty close to what I actually saw. So
that was wonderful. We actually have time if you'd like to do an excerpt from the other series.
Sure. Sure. Okay, I can read the opening scene from The Hunted Maiden. And
Fantastic.
All right, let's see. Chapter 1, Mouse. Just don't look down. Clutching the thick wood of the starboard wing mast with his knees, Mouse focused on the task at hand, rather than the fact that he was perched on a relatively thin piece of wood that was the only thing between him and thousands of feet of open space immediately below. Fumbling against the biting wind, he jammed the end of the fraying rope through the second-to-last grommet on the tarp. His usually dexterous fingers had become clumsy and reluctant lumps of flesh in the frigid late Fannel wind. Tiny bits of ice clung to his eyelashes. Every inch of exposed skin burned as if 1,000 bees were stinging him. Another gust blasted up through the tight space between the mast and the side of the ship. It tore the edge of the tarp from his frozen fingers, yanking at the end of the rope, free of several hard-won grommets. By the blazing fires of the fallen star! Swallowing his frustration, Mouse tightened the grip and leaned out into the open air. Just don't look down. The canvas snapped and popped in the howling wind, dancing to its own wild music. Stretching further out over the void, Mouse snatched in vain at the flapping corner. As quickly as it came, though, the wind died. The entire ship settled into an unnatural stillness. The normal creaking and groaning of the wooden hull faded into an eerie, uneasy silence punctuated by the soft slap of the tarp settling back into place. The sudden stillness in the midst of the oncoming storm could only mean one thing. Oh, shards! Mouse flattened over the tarp and squeezed his eyes shut. Just don't look down. He hugged the mast with both arms and legs. With a screech that reminded him of the full-throated cries of a slant-born whore being cheated out of her hard-earned coin, the wind washed over Mouse in an unstoppable wave. It slammed into the starboard side of the hunter's ghost with unimaginable force, sweeping the ship into the padded bumper poles extending from the stone pier. The impact rolled through every board, mast, and line of rigging with bone-jarring force. Above him, a dozen curses and cries of pain erupted as the rest of the crew scrambled to hold on in the higher rigging of the vertical masts or were knocked from their feet out of the main deck. Beneath him, the wingmast bucked, flinging him several feet up into the air. At the apex of his brief rise, a second surging counter-draft caught the inside of Mouse's jacket, spreading the unbuttoned flaps to either side of his body like the wings of a bird in flight. Time slowed. Movement ceased. Suspended in the gap between the tip of the folded-up wing mast and the massive hull, Mouse couldn't help himself. He looked down. And in that single moment before they began to fall, breathtaking beauty of the view spooling up below and around him overcame the sheer terror gripping at his heart. Extending both down and out to either side of his flailing bare feet, the cliffs of the island of Timos stretched as far as he could see. The uneven gray surface was pocked with the ledges and crevices, and below each of them was streaks of shite from the countless generations of annoying shore gulls that built their nests in them. To his right, the wooden mass of the hull obscured his view of the stone docks and the port of Nache beyond. A towering mass of dark clouds loomed across the western horizon. The roiling formation was every bit as large and imposing as the stone cliffs that framed his eastern view. Lightning danced in dozens of places along the leading edge of the storm, creating images of the churning darkness that reminded him of faces, feminine faces, twisted in grimaces of unfathomable rage. Blinking, Mouse shifted his gaze down towards the interior, thousands of feet below. The winding blue ribbons of water and the button-sized lakes dotting the landscape lacked the characteristic sparkle they had in the bright sun of a cloudless day. The verdant greens of the forest and the rich browns of the fertile soil were dulled by the shadows cast by the incoming storm. I'm flying again. The illusion of flight, however, evaporated as quickly as it came. Dropping like a stone through the narrow gap between the folded-up wingmast and the hull, Mouse reached out in desperation, flailing for the rope ladder. Twice the thick, rain-slicked hemp slipped through frozen fingers. But on the third try, he managed to keep his grip on the bottommost rung, jerked to a halt, and in mid-fall, his body twisted in the air. He slammed into the hull back first. Whoop! The jarring impact sent searing waves of pain flaring out from each from each of the scabbed over wounds that scored the length of his back. Convulsing in agony, Mouse nearly lost his grip. It took every bit of strength and determination that remained within him to push off with his left heel and flip his body around. Don't look down. Gritting his teeth against the fresh waves of pain, Mouse began to climb. It wasn't until he pulled himself up several rungs on the ladder that the realization of how close he'd come to dying hit him. Intertwining his trembling limbs into the ropes, Mouse pressed his forehead against the solid warmth of the hull and gasped for breath. The relentless pounding of his heart against his eardrums obscured everything else until a deep and familiar voice called out from above, cutting through both the rushing wind and his hammering pulse. Mouse! Dalton leaned over the railing, his long forked beard flapping against either side of his otherwise bald head. What are you doing down there with no blasted safety harness? The man waved a meaty hand. Get your land-lubbing arse back up here. Mouse scampered obediently up the rope ladder until a pair of strong hands grabbed his collar and jerked and yanked him roughly over the railing. What in the blazes were you thinking, lad? Dalton thundered over the swirling winds. Don't you ever pull that shite again, you hear me? Staggering under the combined onslaught of the storm's wind and barely contained fury of Dalton's normally calm and steady personal song, Mouse raised his hands in futile defense, but Jigger said, Listen to that fool and get you killed right blasted quick, son. Still holding the lapels of Mouse's jacket, Dalton jerked him upright. I can't watch your scrawny arse and keep these bastards working through hard enough to batten this ship down at the same blasted time. I'm 19 years old and a deckhand on this ship, Mouse bit back. He brushed the large man's hands aside, stood up to his full height of just over 5 feet 8 inches tall, and brushed his wind-blown brown hair through his from his brown eyes. So, I need to do my share, or they're just going to keep seeing me as, I know, boy, Dalton cut him off. I know you mean well, but you're a bleeding fool. Swept up in the power of the music flowing from the old sailor into him, Mouse lost track of what Dalton was shouting at him. His consciousness flowed instead into the stream of the man's raucous music as naturally as those annoying shore gulls rode the constant eddies and swirls of wind bouncing off of the cliffs. He slipped past the strains that showed the deep concern the heavy-set man had for him and those that were focused on his responsibility to prepare the ship for the looming storm. His interest was captured instead by the vibrant images of a heavy-set, smiling woman and bright-eyed children gathered round Dalton as he returned home for after another long voyage. Mouse! Strong hands found his shoulders, giving him a hard squeeze. Mouse, wake up, blast you! Ah! The fresh pain needling down his back jolted him out of his reverie. Ow! I'm sorry, son. Dalton dropped his hands from Mouse's shoulders as if they were on fire. I did not mean to hurt you, but sometimes Mouse sucked in his breath and leaned back, trying to avoid reopening any more of his still healing scars. I know, Dalton. What's happened to you, boy? Concern clouded the bald man's eyes. He pointed to Mouse's head. Where do you keep disappearing to in there? I'm sorry. I wish I could explain it. Whatever reason, boy, you need to stop daydreaming so much, or someday it'll land you in more trouble than your glib tongue can talk you out of, Dalton sighed. Never mind. I've got something else for you to do, something that'll help more than you trying to hand your hand to any more of this here jib work. What's that? I need you to go into town. Dalton nodded towards the shore and pressed a small pouch of coins into his hand. And get some grog for these thirsty bastards. They'll work harder if they know something good's waiting for them at the end of all this blasted effort. So there's the first scene of The Hunted Maiden.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you. You're welcome.
So I think we have a question here. So it says, I noticed that you wrote in third person in the first book and third person in this one. Which do you prefer to write/read in? Oh, they meant first person in the first book, third person in this one.
Yeah, I get that. So yeah, the Omega Rising is written in the first person, and it's there's a lot of challenges to doing that, and keeping the story interesting and fun, in the sense that you have a limited perspective from which to tell the story. First person, you can only tell the story that which that first person has a knowledge of, or a belief in, or suspicion of. And so I really do enjoy both the first person and third person. It's easier and more natural for me to write in the third person, I think, just because it's something that I grew up reading more books that were that way. And it's kind of how I learned to write, was in the third person. But for me, when I did Omega Rising, the first person was just a better fit, because I could adapt to Rusty Bones's personal voice, and I found ways to bring in information that or for him to find out information so that I could share it with the reader as well. So, and to tell the story as I needed to. But they both present challenges, I do believe. And so, with the Hunted Maiden in third person, I primarily write the vast majority of that story between third person close for both Mouse and Seldy. So, it was particularly fun and challenging for both Mouse and Seldy. Mouse, writing for him, I have to get into this. I always have to remember after I write one of his scenes that he has this ability to hear things that other people don't. And then I kind of have to weave that knowledge back into the scenes, because he might infer more information out of someone's tone of voice and the way their song changes when they say something, rather than paying direct attention to what is being actually said. And he can also gain information on people's intentions and other types of things. And so he sometimes jumps to conclusions and doesn't have full knowledge or ability to really narrow in on what all those things mean. And then Seldy, writing from the perspective of a teenage female who's happy with her life until everything is taken away from her, until all that she loves is taken away and she's put in an impossible situation. And then finding a way to do that with an authenticity and an honesty that honors, where she's at in life and how she sees the world and understands the world. And so I had to learn a lot and broaden my own horizons, and in being able to take on her perspective and write in that third person, because I like to do it in third person close. I'm not someone who likes the distant third person.
Yeah, so what I find interesting about what we're talking about, especially in Mice's ability to pick up on a different wavelength, if you will, and that he may not always be able to infer the correct outcome or apply it to like a certain standard of thinking, which I find is very approachable for those who are neurodiverse, those who might have autism, those, etc., who are going off of a different set of tools and are going to have different strengths, which is kind of what I feel Mice makes very relatable. So
yeah, Mouse. Matter of fact, one of the things that so as the story progresses in Mouse's story, he actually, because once he meets Seldy, his abilities to understand music and hear music from even a greater distance, from like at one point he hears the songs of everybody on the ship that he's on. And it's overwhelming, and he hasn't learned how to sort through or block that stuff out yet, and those are things that he has to learn. But he sees sound in colors and stuff like that, so he has a bit of synesthesia that he experienced, because he goes to this place when his skill reaches a certain ability or level, he actually kind of can shift into what he calls the soundscape. And the soundscape is a way of looking at the world, and all the sounds and parts of songs that he hears form up into different images than maybe what the physical reality around him is. But it tells him information that he can use. And so the soundscape is sort of a different way of seeing reality. And it's delving into that and some of the things that he and Seldy get into in terms of how they see and understand the world, it's just, I think some of my best work as a writer has gone into that series on trying to make all of that relatable and understandable to the reader.
Yeah, that definitely comes across. That's really interesting. All right, we are at the top of the hour, so feel free to close this out.
All right. Well, again, thank you everybody for coming. I hope you enjoyed the reading of the samples for my books. If you are interested in obtaining signed copies, I'd love to hear from you, what you thought of it, and reach out to me by direct message, by email, through any of the platforms that I mentioned: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I monitor all of those on a daily basis, and I always looking to engage with readers. And I love to answer questions about the story and talk about the story. If anyone wants to do that, I'd regularly engage with conversations with readers who are enjoying one or more of the books that I've written. So hopefully you've enjoyed this, and I hope that you stay on and enjoy the rest of this event with all these other cool authors. This is a really special thing. Thank you very much for allowing me to be here.
Thank you, Douglas. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you, Nimmer.